If you want a loving mate because you need to be loved, you're going to attract someone who makes you feel unloved.
One of the critical things is not needing to be in a relationship, not needing another person to complete you.
Step number 7 is the most important step.
Step 7 is,
how did we attract each other without even knowing it? Do you want to talk about our story?
I think we should.
Our story is a story of epic romance in the mountains. He had just sworn off girls.
I wanted nothing to do with relationships for the foreseeable future. It had been a mess, and I just needed some time. So what do you do when you need time and no relationships? You go to the woods.
Yeah, so we both had this opportunity in our church group. We were from different states. He was from New York. I'm from Ohio.
We never met. We didn't know each other.
Yeah, we never met. And we had this opportunity to go to a Challenger program in the Teton Mountains where we backpacked for 2 weeks. And I really, really didn't want to go.
It was wilderness skills and orienteering and rock climbing and all of these really awesome sounding things to a 19-year-old guy. Less so to a 17-year-old girl, I guess.
For you, it was more of the spiritual journey you were on because you had just, you just had your heart broken. You had just gone through all of this upheaval and turmoil, and you had rededicated yourself to God. You had just gotten baptized. It was like a starting fresh.
I really had come to the point where I realized that life was not taking the route that I thought it had been when I had been in that relationship. And so everything was up in the air feeling. And I realized I needed to really reorient myself in terms of where my life was heading and what I was pursuing, and following God and focusing on that relationship was really critical.
And it's interesting how often I've heard that kind of story from people. It's usually when people finally are done with relationships and they really mean it, and they're like, you know what, I'm good without one. I'm just gonna go, have a relationship with God or just go for what I want. And then all of a sudden the perfect person pops up when they're least expecting it. And I did not want to go to this camp. I had social anxiety, and so the thought of going to a 2-week camp with people I didn't know was kind of terrifying. And my best friend, who I wasn't scared of, she's very outgoing. She's an extrovert, and she convinced me, Mary, you need to go to this camp. Come on, I'm going. We need to train. And that wasn't enough by itself to get me to go. But then my pastor was trying to encourage me to go, and my dad, who I respect and admire a lot.
I think your dad just went and bought all of the gear
Yeah,
and
he pretty
told
much
you,
did.
Oh, here you go, you're going.
Yes, so my dad bought me everything, and I'm like, oh man, I can't not go now. So I kind of went kicking and screaming to this camp. And little did I know that I was going to find
the one.
But Aaron had just sworn off girls, and I wasn't interested in getting into a relationship at all. I just was like I don't care. I always had a lot of guy friends, and so getting into a relationship was not something that I really was interested in or talked much about. So we were both kind of in this place of not wanting it, not looking for it, which is exactly what we're going to get into later of that's usually when it will appear. Mm-hmm. As soon as you give up, that's when it flies in.
As soon as you don't need it and
Yes.
You're not searching for it.
Yeah, because if you're looking for somebody to complete you, then you're either going to attract a narcissistic relationship or something that's a little codependent, or something you don't want that's going to blow up in your face, or you're not going to attract anything at all. So we go to this camp, and Aaron, one of the most memorable moments, which he loves me telling this story, was around the campfire one night. It's a church camp, so we have biblical discussions around the fire one night. We're talking about relationships, and Aaron stands up to speak, and he proudly announces, well, I could marry any girl here.
First of all, for the record, teenage girls are incredibly judgmental and unforgiving. What I meant was that this was part of the conversation we were having around the fire, because all of us there shared a common moral foundation, a belief in the Bible, having a relationship with God. That foundation was a very strong basis upon which to build a relationship, regardless of a lot of the other personality, different personalities, or different likes and dislikes. With that same foundation, there's the potential to build a relationship, regardless of more of the superficial topical issues.
All of the teenage girls there, as you can imagine, were like, who does this guy think he is? Like, he can marry any of us? Yeah, right. So that was my first impression of him. Under the surface, though, I mean, I thought he was kind of nerdy. Like, he was a little nerdy for me. I did not want a nerd, because I secretly am a nerd, but I didn't want anybody to know that at that point. I was kind of guarded and prickly. Erin said I have a marshmallow center, but prickly shell on the outside.
She had a rapier wit with marshmallows underneath.
And so I basically was like, okay, well, that's one guy. That guy, I'm definitely not going to get to know because he's a little off. So we always kept ending up in the same groups with each other, just miraculously.
Most of it was actually complete chance.
So I didn't really like him very much. I don't know what you thought of me at that point.
You were interesting. I could tell there was a lot of depth and a lot of sarcasm and wit, which I liked.
We kind of matched on an intellectual, spiritual level. But so one night we hiked up to the top of this mountain, and it was summertime. It was July, but there was snow on some of these mountains. And so it was this really cool setting. And somehow at a church camp at night on top of this mountain, they let the girls all line up in one row and with their sleeping bags, and the guys all line up with their sleeping bags in another row. And we kind of were all like sleeping like head to head. So we're lying out under the stars, and one by one, everybody else started falling asleep. But Erin and I stayed up all for hours just talking. And, when you're in the dark, you can open up about like all sorts of things you normally wouldn't be able to talk about. So we were just kind of telling each other our deepest thoughts and getting into philosophy and the mysteries of the universe. And it was this heart to heart connection that I didn't expect underneath the nerdiness.
It was a really good conversation, and you get that sort of anonymity of being outside in the dark, and it just sort of puts a covering over everything, and being able to talk about a lot of those deeper things in this sort of shroud of safety laying there in the dark. I think we both realized, there's a whole lot to this other person, more than we thought there was.
Right. And I was always looking for depth and complexity in my relationships where we could talk about the spiritual important things. I hated small talk. I hated it so much. I just wanted to dive like right into the actual meaningful parts of life. And I think you were looking for somebody that was your intellectual superior, right?
I was at least looking for someone who could keep up.
There we go. And so anyways, we wake up the next morning, and I remember thinking like, whoa, like, is that real? But it was, and it was this magical moment. And I knew that he was a lot deeper than I had originally wrote him off to be. After
we had that conversation at night, I remember thinking as I was falling asleep that night, and then the next morning, I'm going to have to watch this girl. Not in the weird, like I can see.
I'm going to have to stalk this girl.
I'm going to have to creepily stare. No.
We went into Jackson Hole, the town, and we went into all these like little kitschy like art shops and stuff like that. And like I liked to mock everything at that point.
We mocked a lot of rural or like frontier art. That was a lot of fun. You wouldn't believe the things you can make out of antlers.
So like we connected on like a sense of humor level too.
Mm-hmm. And I remember thinking, thinking, I'm curious to see what decisions she makes over the course of time.
Because you were so much older and wiser. You were like the grand ripe old age of 20, and I was 17, just going into college.
Cute, and yep, still cute and fuzzy. And I had
Fuzzy. Look who's talking.
God has a sense of humor in the timeline that things work out in, but realizing, there's potential here, but still not allowing myself to just fall head over heels and start pursuing her.
Even though you wanted to.
Things escalated more quickly than I expected.
So then at the airport, when we're all waiting for our flights to be called, I'm like, is he gonna ask? Like, is he seriously not gonna get my number? Like, I exchanged numbers with every other person there except for you.
And I'm sitting there feeling massively conflicted. I really like this girl, but I don't want to get back on the treadmill of the relationship thing. I just got totally burned. And I'm going back and forth in my head going, what are we going to do? What am I going to do? Should I ask her for her phone number? Should I email? Should I just kind of wait and see what happens? And then finally...
He waits till the second that my flight is called and I'm getting up.
They were boarding her flight, and finally I'm just like, you know what? Forget it. I want her phone number.
Couldn't resist me any longer.
Try as I might. But I finally said, hey, do you want to give me your phone number so maybe we could talk sometime?
And we exchanged numbers really fast. And then I got on the flight and I'm sitting next to my best friend and we're taking off and I see the mountains like fading away into the distance. And I start crying because I'm like, oh, wow, I'm really, really going to miss him. Because we had 8 hour not time difference. We had 8 hours
separation between where we lived.
Yeah. So I knew if it did turn into anything, even a friendship, it would be long distance. But anyways, the first time you called me, I was at my aunt's house and I had social anxiety and I freaked out and almost didn't answer the phone when I see your number. Not because I was scared of a relationship, but I was just scared of commitment or intimacy, something like that. But either way, I had to consciously, like, God connected us. We dated for 4 really long years. But how long have we been married now? It's either 14 or 15 years. We keep telling people the wrong. I think it's going to be 15.
We're right around the 14 and a half year mark
and
now.
We've been together for since 2006. So
yep,
that's 18 years. So that's our story. I think it's a divine appointment of a relationship for us. And I know that that's true for so many people, that when they're ready, it just appears. Your underlying beliefs, all your subconscious stuff is actually what's attracting you to negative relationships or positive relationships. The first step is to choose who you want.
And that may sound misleading because it doesn't mean pick the person that you want to be in a relationship with. So instead, you need to identify what are the qualities, what are the characteristics of the type of person that you like to be in a relationship with.
And you want to write all these down.
You want to be very, very specific and very clear, but at the same time be very flexible and open-ended.
The more open-ended you are, the more you give God room to work, to give you who you actually need.
So give us some examples of like what characteristics, qualities would be this open, expansive description of the person you'd be interested in.
I think it's the same thing as what everybody wants. You want the person to be loving. You want them to be kind. I mean, it depends person to person to some degree, but everybody really, when you get down to it, just wants a loving relationship.
You could even get more specific in terms of I want somebody who's really spontaneous, somebody who's
right.
Has an explosive sense of humor,
yeah.
or things like that really matter to you.
Yeah, I mean, you just tune in to like what would feel really great if I was in a relationship with a person.
And get it
looking for.
And get it down on paper, ideally, or in print, so that you can apply it in step 2. Step 2 is, and here's the trick reversal. You look at that list. Those are the qualities that you need to adopt, that you need to become, because that's the trick. When you become the type of person that you would be attracted to, you open yourself up to attracting that exact type of person.
Right. You want to become the person that you are looking for energetically. On an energetic level, you literally are like a puzzle piece that does not fit together with the ideal match that you want. If you're looking for somebody that's loving, but under the surface you're not a very loving person, then
It's not a fit.
it's not a fit, and you won't bring that. Like, that person won't appear in your life until it is. You might get a lot of people that aren't loving or that seem loving on the surface, but really aren't when you actually get into a relationship with them. You have to look at the list you just made and be honest with yourself, brutally honest. Which ones of these am I still working on? And really start becoming that person.
One of the critical things is partly not needing to be in a relationship, not needing another person to complete you.
If you want a loving mate because you need to be loved, you're not going to attract someone who is loving. You're going to attract someone who makes you feel unloved because you need it from that person. So the things on that list that you aren't yet are the parts that you need to feel complete in and of yourself, because only God can complete you on those levels. And if you're looking for another person to complete you, it's not going to be pretty.
that will create a negative codependent relationship. If you need someone to fill in your gaps, to fill in your deficits.
You really don't want to attract a relationship until you have these things figured out, because it's not going to be the relationship that you want or that you need. It's going to be something unbalanced, and no relationship is going to be perfect. Aaron and we had certain codependent things in our relationships, and everybody has something that they're going to need to refine as they grow in the relationship. You're not going to find somebody that's perfect.
Right, and you don't need to be perfect to get into a relationship, as long as you both have the understanding that you're both constantly growing and improving.
Yeah. Well, part of the reason for a relationship in the grand divine sense is to refine you, is to chisel off those rough edges. And, because I've talked to some people that can't find a mate, and when I talk to them, it's because they want the person to be perfect already.
And I kind of think of it like one of those rock tumblers. You put gems in and you let the thing work and tumble around, and it knocks all the rough edges off of whatever you put in there. It doesn't work if you put one rock in. There have to be two rocks to knock the rough edges off each other, and that's marriage a lot of the time. You wind up polishing each other, because whether a good fit, you're going to have lots of complementary qualities, but you're also probably going to have things that grate on each other. And it's not because it's the wrong relationship or because the person isn't right for you.
And grinding is how you get the rough edges off.
Exactly.
You're going to grate on each other. You're going to have sparks that fly sometimes, but that's literally the refining process. The most attractive quality that you can have is to just be yourself. The real you, not all the layers of who you think you are and who you have to impress people and all the stories you tell yourself.
If you need something, then all of a sudden there's a lot of pressure to perform and be witty and smart and make a good first impression and a good second impression. And it's kind of the kiss of death.
Yeah. It's funny though, because that almost sounds like a contradiction to what we're talking about being the person that you want to attract. But the truth is, the more you are your real self, the more you're going to attract the person that just fits perfectly with your blueprint.
With the real you, and not who.
Yeah. And that's what this process in this step is about. It's about saying, which areas do I still have a sense of false self, like where I think I'm unloving? Well, that's not really me. and working through those things.
And developing your true character traits instead of the mask that you show people when you want to make a good impression.
Yes, because if you're your mask when you're meeting someone and you guys get in a relationship, you're just married to the mask. And after a little while, the mask comes off and you see the real person. It's usually 6 months in a relationship, 6 months, when you're like, who is this person?
That's usually the length of time that people are able to hold out being who they want to be instead of who they actually are.
Yes.
If there's a big discrepancy there, the 6 month mark is where, okay, you probably can't fake it much longer than that with someone.
Yep. So take a look at your list and just, see where you don't measure up to the person that you wanna become, and pray over it, or just meditate on it and let yourself shift.
Step number 3 is to write down your choice.
So this is getting a little bit more into technique. This isn't what we did before about listing off the qualities you want the person to embody. This is something very expansive. It is a choice. Write down, I choose the end result of, and you want something really, really expansive here. Like, I choose the end result of a loving relationship. Something really big that feels really good when you feel into it. And a key here is you need to ask yourself, why do I want that? So if you wrote it down, I choose the end result of a loving relationship, and you ask yourself, why do I want that? And you have any reason. Oh, I want that because it'll make me feel good. If you have any reason, then you're not choosing it for the right reasons. You need to get to the point where you choose something just because you would love it.
That's all I want.
The right answer should always be, why do I want that? Because I love that.
I just do. I just want that.
Because getting back into what you were saying before about filling holes, if you have a need, like you need something, that's a hole you're trying to fill. And any answer you have to why do I want that is a hole.
If it's I want this so that I get something else, it's a means goal. It's not the goal in and of itself for the pure sense of attaining that. The next step is feeling into it.
Yeah.
That sounds really ushy-gushy.
You don't really want a relationship. You want the feelings that relationship is going to bring you. Like everybody, we all think we want things, but really we just want the feeling of what that thing would bring us. And so the key here is you need to be feeling it now. You need to be feeling the way you would feel if you already had the relationship right now. You need to be feeling whole,
content and joyful, and all of those warm fuzzy feelings that it seems like would be a result of having it,
Yes.
but instead need to be where that relationship comes from.
Because what's going to happen if you go into the relationship and you don't feel those things already? Let's say you do attract a person. You're going to get into their relationship and you're going to end up feeling exactly how you do already right now. After the initial high wears off, you're going to still feel exactly how you do.
If you feel empty or unfulfilled or just always thinking, oh, this should be better, you're still going to feel like that when you have the relationship that you want.
When you train yourself to feel a certain way, you're literally practicing feeling a certain way. You're rehearsing it, and you're training your body how you want it to feel, to behave.
I've struggled with this in some areas, and I find that the most effective way is to think, all right, if I can imagine into the future when this has happened already, how is that going to feel? Not if, not, oh, how could I do that? But just thinking in the future, how would it feel when this is the case? And being able to
But you want to bring it into the current reality.
Right, and then take that feeling and go, all right, I am rehearsing for when this has worked.
And then, the whole goal is to feel it as if you already have it.
Right.
Right now. We don't want to envision something way off in the future. We want to bring it into the current, into the present.
And realizing you can feel that now, even before that circumstances happened.
Yeah. And usually, well, as soon as you're feeling these feelings to the full and you're just complete and you're whole, the person just pops in because you're ready.
So the next step in the process is actually the very opposite of that. Step 5 is to feel into what's the current reality. What's it feel like now?
And it should be pretty easy because you're already feeling it.
Yeah, usually that's like falling off a log because those are all the feelings you already have about.
And nobody wants to stay in this zone. It feels a lot better to stay in the other space. But we have to be honest and just look at what does it feel like right now compared to that? And when you do the prior step before this, you really notice the contrast.
Right. When you go back and forth between what will it feel like when I have the thing I long for, and now what does it feel like now? Oh, there's a big difference there. And that's the point. The space in between is where the change needs to happen.
It's a different you. And you're not fixing yourself. You're just becoming more of the real, authentic, whole version of you. But you have to notice, what is this person that's me right now in this reality? What does this person believe? What does this person think? And you can kind of list these things off to yourself. And then, you can also think, okay, well, what does that other person believe? The one that already has the ideal partner. And they're going to be two very different things. And that's where we get to the next step. Step 6 is to recode, rewire. There are a lot of different ways to do this, but the biggest, easiest way is just to take it to God and say, hey, all this stuff that's blocking me from having this ideal partner, bring it up and heal it. And there's neuroscience methods to actually do this, but it's actually the same thing as if you just sit there in a prayerful meditative state and you're like, okay, I choose that end result of my ideal partner. What's in the way? And you just let that thing come up and you say, God, please heal that.
And you constantly choose, you make the choice over and over again to be what you want to be and not how you are.
A lot of this recode process is just sitting there. And sometimes you might think nothing's happening, but if you sit there and you say, hey, God, please heal this old wound. Or maybe you don't even know what it is. You just say,
You
God,
don't have to. That's the
heal. Trick. Yeah, you don't have to know. The Spirit searches all things. And it knows. He knows. So you can tell if it's working or not. If you ask him and then you just sit there and notice what you notice. And you will notice things shifting if you're paying attention. And that's the thing. People don't pay attention to what shifts when they pray about something. And so they think it's not working. And so they fall back into their old patterns and their old self because they don't have the faith to act as if and be that person that already has the relationship they want.
To be able to sit in that place and say,
discomfort.
Please change this, make this different about me, and to choose consistently that I want to change that. I want to become like the person you want to be.
We have these two different selves. We have the version of us that has the ideal partner. And that's a different person than who we are right now in the current reality. And most people, when they try to fix who they are right now, it's like anchoring a rubber band to who you are here and trying to stretch over here. And what's going to happen? The tension gets so much that you eventually just slingshot right back.
It snaps back to how everything is right now.
What we want to do is stay in this end result over here. I want to be this me who feels this way when I have the partner I want to have.
To anchor yourself to that future.
What happens when you stretch a rubber band like that is the tension resolves this way, and you're going to feel the tension. Your stuff is going to come up.
But it will pull you in the direction you want to go instead of backwards.
Exactly. And that's key. So step number 7 is the most important step.
Step 7 is to actually take action.
Yes. And the reason we do all the steps 1 through 6 is that the action steps are much harder to take if you're not energetically aligned, if you haven't let go of the old traumas and beliefs and things that cause you to be this old self instead of the new self. It's a lot harder to take the action, to go step by step by step. Because like we said, you'll just get slingshotted back if you have all this resistance pulling you back. The recoding gets rid of the resistance so you can take these steps easier.
If you're just using brute force willpower to just take the next step, eventually you're going to run out of willpower and you're going to stop making progress. So the real question, what is the next step? What action step can you take right now today?
And that's where it gets really cool because you already know, because your spirit knows. When you feel into that version of you that you want to be, that has the ideal relationship, you can literally ask yourself when you're in that, or at least you're focusing on it, even if you don't feel it yet.
Sitting in a quiet state of mind.
You just ask yourself, or you can ask God. It's the same thing when you're tuned in.
When you're connected with God, you get the same answer.
You ask yourself, what is my next most obvious action step? And you just let the answer float in and you'll get it. You just listen. You just gotta listen to what comes in. Maybe nothing comes. Maybe you get nothing. Maybe you just get blank. That's an action too. Waiting is an action.
Sometimes that can be the hardest action to take is just let things cook.
And then the hardest part is actually following through on that action. And if you might have an action that seems, okay, that's easy. I can do that. I can go to this camp. I can go to this social engagement. I can go to church. I can go talk to this girl, whatever the action is. Sometimes it's easy. Sometimes you're going to have a ton of resistance, and that's where you're going to need to do the recode again.
And you'll come up with all the reasons you shouldn't have to take that action.
Yes. The biggest thing is the follow through. That is the most important thing.
And you don't need to know the next 10 steps to take. You don't need to know what you're going to do for the next 3 months.
Right.
All you need is the one next step. There's always just one step to take.
So what is the one thing that people can do right now? Because I'm sure we have people listening that they're like, okay, that's a lot of stuff. That's a lot to internalize. What can they do now? Yeah. It's very, very, very simple. All you do is you set an alarm on your phone that goes off every single hour. And every time that alarm goes off, you stop whatever you're doing, no matter what it is,
Just for a couple of minutes.
just for a minute or 2 minutes. And you consciously tune in to feeling that end result. How would it feel if I already had a loving relationship? If you do that consistently every single hour, it might be very hard at first, but eventually you're going to realize, oh, I'm just going about my day and my alarm went off and I already feel like I have that.
And that's step 4, the feeling of what will it feel like when I have the loving relationship that I want. Every hour getting into that feeling and teaching your brain slowly for that to be the new default setting of how you feel now.
And then the action steps will naturally flow from that too. Like once you are that person and you're always feeling it, you're just going to make different decisions, even if they're infinitesimally different.
The more you feel that way, the more obvious you will take actions as that person every hour. And just for a minute, take a quiet moment and think, what will it feel like when I have that relationship? I can feel that way now.
Feels good to feel that way now.
Go ahead and hit the subscribe button if you want to hear more spiritual action steps to help create your ideal reality.